The unexpected inheritance. James Carter stood in the Grand Veraxian court, feeling completely out of place. The towering alien pillars loomed above him, carved with symbols he couldn't understand. Hundreds of Veraxian nobles watched him with their glowing eyes, whispering in their strange language. He had come to this planet only because of Orkel, his best friend. The warrior had died in battle, and James had received a message summoning him here. He thought he would be claiming some inheritance. Maybe money, maybe land. Instead, the High Speaker, an alien with silver skin and long robes, had just said something that made his stomach drop. By the laws of Verax, you have inherited Orkel's sisters. From this day forward, they are your wives. James blinked. He must have misheard. I'm sorry. What? The High Speaker's glowing eyes did not blink. You were Orkel's chosen heir. Everything that was his now belongs to you, including his sisters. James's mouth went dry. This had to be a mistake. He wasn't Veraxian. He didn't even know their laws. I think there's been some misunderstanding, James said, forcing a smile. I can't just inherit people. The nobles murmured again. Some laughed. Others looked offended. The High Speaker did not smile. In Veraxian law, family is sacred, he explained. A warrior's duty does not end in death. His heir must protect those he leaves behind. To refuse is to dishonor him. James clenched his fists. Orkel had been like a brother to him. They had fought together, survived together. He had promised to honor his friend's memory. But this was insane. The High Speaker gestured, and 3 figures stepped forward. James turned, his heart pounding. 3 alien women stood before him. The first, Xina, was tall and elegant, with dark blue skin and piercing silver eyes. She held her head high, her gaze sharp and unreadable. The second, Karis, was smaller, her purple hair cascading over her shoulders. She had a calm, almost sad look in her eyes. The third, Velra, was the youngest. She barely looked at him, her arms crossed, her expression defiant. They were staring at him just as he was staring at them. James swallowed hard. What was he supposed to say? Hey, nice to meet you. Apparently, I own you now. Xina stepped forward first. You are the human my brother spoke of. Her voice was smooth but held suspicion. James nodded slowly. I was Orkel's friend. Velra scoffed. And now you're supposed to be our husband. She said the word like it was poison. Ridiculous. Karis glanced at her but said nothing. James rubbed his face. He had no idea how to handle this. There must be a way to refuse, he said to the High Speaker. I can't just be given wives like some kind of. Refusal is dishonor, the High Speaker interrupted. If you reject them, the rival clans will take them by force. James froze. Take them by force. Xina's eyes narrowed. We are not weak. No, but we are hunted, Karis said softly. James's mind raced. What the hell had Orkel gotten him into? Then a voice rang through the hall, one filled with mockery and cruelty. I challenge this claim. The court fell silent. James turned to see a massive Veraxian warrior stepping forward. His armor gleamed, and his golden eyes locked onto James with pure hatred. I am Drevak, of the Shadowclaw clan, the warrior said. His voice was deep, threatening. Orkel's sisters belong to me. This human is unworthy. James's stomach twisted. He had never seen this alien before, but he immediately knew he was trouble. The High Speaker's face darkened. The law is clear. The inheritance is already given. Drevak smiled. Then I invoked the right of challenge. The crowd gasped. James had no idea what that meant, but it sounded bad. The High Speaker hesitated. You would challenge a human. Drevak laughed. Of course. He is weak. He cannot even fight. His gaze snapped to James. Accept the challenge, human. Fight me or surrender what is mine. James's heart pounded. Fight. Against this mountain of muscle. This wasn't a fair challenge. It was a death sentence. He looked at the sisters. Xyna's face was unreadable, but Velra's fists were clenched. Karis looked at the floor, her expression tight with worry. If he refused, Drevak would claim them. He could see it in the way the alien looked at them, like prizes. James had never run from a fight before, but this wasn't just about him. He took a deep breath. I accept. The court erupted in chaos. Drevak's grin widened. Then prepare yourself, human. Tomorrow, you die. James felt his stomach twist. He had no weapons, no armor, no training. And now, in less than 24 hours, he had to fight a warrior built to kill. He had just signed his own death sentence. But as he glanced at Xyna, Karis and Velra, he knew one thing. If Orkel had trusted him with their lives, then he would find a way to survive, even if it meant breaking every rule of this alien world. The sisters and the danger they bring. James Carter stood in the cold stone chamber, staring at his reflection in a polished metal plate. The bruises on his face had started to darken. His ribs ached every time he took a breath. Drevak had nearly crushed him in that fight, and yet, somehow, he was still alive. But that wasn't the worst part. Behind him, 3 alien women watched him in silence. Xyna, Karis, and Velra. His new wives, at least according to Veraxian law. James ran a hand through his messy brown hair. I don't suppose there's a way to, undo this. No, Xyna said bluntly. Velra snorted, crossing her arms. You fought for us. You claimed us. That means you take responsibility. James sighed. I didn't fight to claim anyone. I fought to stop Drevak from taking you. Karis, the quietest of the 3, finally spoke. That is why you survived. James frowned. What do you mean? Xyna's silver eyes locked onto his. Drevak is a trained killer. You should be dead. But you fought like a man who refused to lose, not for himself, but for others. That is rare among Veraxian warriors. James scratched the back of his neck. Yeah, well, humans are stubborn. Velra muttered something under her breath, shaking her head. You should have let us fight. James raised an eyebrow. Against that monster? I don't think so. Velra's eyes flashed with anger. You think we are weak. Enough, Xyna said, silencing her sister with a sharp look. Then she turned back to James. You need to understand something, human. We are not just Orkel's sisters. We are being hunted. James stiffened. Hunted by who? Karis's voice was barely above a whisper. By our own people. A deadly secret. The room fell into silence. James sat down on a stone bench, rubbing his temples. All right. Start from the beginning. Xyna's expression remained calm, but James could tell she was measuring her words carefully. Our bloodline is old, she explained. Older than Orkel's clan, older than the High Speaker's rule. We are descendants of the Starborn lineage, the true rulers of Verax before the Great Wars. James frowned. So, you're royalty. Karis nodded. Once. But that title means nothing now. Our family was nearly wiped out 100 years ago. The few survivors were hidden, forced to live as warriors and nobles under false names. Velra scowled. Our parents were betrayed. Orkel knew the truth, but he never told anyone. He protected us. James exhaled slowly. This was getting way more complicated than he expected. So Drevak doesn't just want you because of the law, he said, piecing it together. He wants you because of your bloodline. Xyna nodded. If he controls us, he can claim the throne. James let that sink in. And now, the whole planet thinks I own you. Velra smirked. You catch on fast. James groaned. Great, so now I have a target on my back, and I didn't even ask for it. Xyna placed a hand on his shoulder. Her touch was cold but firm. You may not have chosen this, James Carter, but now, you are in it. A sharp knock echoed through the chamber. James's muscles tensed. Something felt wrong. Xina and Velora exchanged a glance. Karis's fingers twitched. The door slammed open. 3 Veraxian guards rushed inside, weapons drawn. "The High Speaker demands your presence." One of them barked. James didn't move. Something in their eyes, the way their hands gripped their weapons. They weren't here to escort him. They were here to eliminate him. The attack. Everything happened at once. Xina moved first. In a flash, she grabbed one of the guards by the wrist and twisted. "Karaki!" The alien roared in pain as his arm snapped. Velora lunged, using her small size to her advantage. She darted past the second guard and landed a sharp elbow to his throat. He collapsed, gasping for air. James wasn't as fast. He barely had time to dodge before the third guard swung a blade at his neck. Adrenaline kicked in. James ducked, grabbed a metal plate from the table, and smashed it into the guard's face. The alien stumbled, blood spraying from his nose. Karis stepped forward, her voice cold. "Enough." The remaining guards froze in place. Their eyes widened, not in fear of James, or Xina, or Velora, but in fear of her. James felt a chill run down his spine. "What did you just do?" he whispered. The guards collapsed, their bodies limp, as if their very will to fight had been drained. Karis exhaled. "I didn't kill them." James's heart pounded. He had seen powerful warriors before, but whatever Karis had just done, it wasn't normal. Xina grabbed his arm. "We need to go. Now." James didn't argue. They ran through the stone halls, the alarms blaring behind them. James had come to this planet expecting a simple inheritance. Instead, he had inherited 3 dangerous women and the wrath of an entire empire. The deadly escape. James Carter ran. His boots pounded against the cold stone floors of the Veraxian palace, the sound echoing through the empty halls. The alarms screamed around him, a deep, vibrating hum that rattled his bones. Behind him, Xina, Karis, and Velora ran in perfect sync, their alien agility making them almost silent compared to his own frantic footsteps. "We can't outrun them forever," James hissed. Xina didn't even look back. "We don't need to outrun them. We need to get to the lower levels." James barely had time to ask why before a blast of energy tore through the air behind him. Boom! The wall to their right exploded, sending shards of rock flying in all directions. James dove forward, rolling onto the cold floor as debris rained down. A second blast followed, this one barely missing Velora. She cursed under her breath, pulling James back to his feet. "They're catching up." James turned to see Veraxian enforcers, 10 of them, maybe more, charging toward them, weapons glowing with lethal energy. Xina's silver eyes locked onto the nearest doorway. "This way." She sprinted ahead, and James had no choice but to follow. The chase. They darted through a narrow passage, the walls lined with glowing alien symbols that pulsed in rhythm with the alarms. James had no idea where they were, but he knew one thing. They were being herded. Velora was the first to realize it. "They're driving us toward the southern wing." Xina cursed. "That leads to the execution chambers." James's stomach twisted. "Great. We're running straight into a dead end." Karis, who had been quiet the entire time, suddenly grabbed his arm. "Not a dead end. There is another way." James turned to her. "What way?" Karis looked at the ceiling. Down. Before he could react, she slammed her foot onto the floor. A low rumble shook the entire hallway. Then, without warning, the ground collapsed beneath them. The fall into darkness. James's stomach dropped as he plummeted into the unknown. Dust and debris swirled around him, making it impossible to see. Then, Hirakake. He hit something hard, pain shooting through his back as he rolled onto a cold metal floor. He groaned, forcing himself up. "I'm alive, I think." A soft grunt came from his right. Xina was already on her feet, scanning their surroundings. Velora was dusting herself off. Karis landed last, floating down too gracefully for someone who had just fallen through a floor. James exhaled sharply. Okay, what the hell just happened? Harris motioned to the walls around them. We're in the old tunnels beneath the palace. James looked around. The chamber was massive, stretching into endless darkness. Strange machinery lined the walls, humming softly. This place was ancient. Zina narrowed her eyes. How did you know this was here? Karis hesitated before answering. Because I've been here before. James's brow furrowed. He wanted to ask when and why, but before he cooled, a distant, metallic screech echoed through the tunnels. Velra's expression hardened. We're not alone down here. James felt a chill crawl up his spine. He reached for his sidearm, only to remember he didn't have one. Zina grabbed his wrist. We need to move. Now. They sprinted deeper into the tunnels, the screeching sound growing louder behind them. James had no idea what was down here. But something was coming. And it was hungry. The law cannot be broken. Or can it? James Carter leaned against the cold metal wall of the ancient tunnel, catching his breath. The air was thick with dust and history, carrying a strange scent, something between burnt metal and old energy. Zina, Karis, and Velra stood beside him, their glowing eyes scanning the darkness. The thing chasing them had stopped for now, but James could still feel it watching. We can't stay here, Velra muttered. No kidding, James said, wiping sweat from his brow. So what now? We keep running. Karis stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. No, we stop running. We take back control. James raised an eyebrow. And how exactly do we do that? Drevak owns half the planet. I nearly got my head taken off yesterday, and let's not forget. He motioned around the tunnels. We're trapped under the palace. Zina's eyes flashed silver. There's a way to break the law. James blinked. I thought you said Veraxian law is absolute. She turned to face him fully. It is. James sighed. You're not making sense. Karis finally spoke, her voice softer. The law cannot be broken, James, but it can be rewritten. James narrowed his eyes. I'm listening. The ancient throne, a hidden secret. Karis placed her hand against the metal walls of the tunnel. Strange blue lines flickered beneath her touch. This place, she whispered. It was once part of the old throne. James frowned. The what? Velra crossed her arms. The first rulers of Verax sat here, before the warlords took over. Zina's voice was serious. Back then, the throne was not won by blood, but by wisdom. The one who could activate it had the power to change the law itself. James exhaled. So you're saying if we find this throne, we rewrite the laws. Make it so you're not my wives and Drevak has no claim over you. Karis nodded. Exactly. James rubbed his temples. And let me guess, Drevak knows about this too. Velra's smirk was bitter. Oh, he knows. As if summoned by his name, a distant explosion rocked the tunnels. The ground shook, dust falling from the ceiling. James's pulse spiked. Tell me that's just a coincidence. Zina's expression darkened. He's found us. The battle in the depths. The tunnels came alive with flashing lights and the roar of approaching soldiers. James grabbed a rusted metal rod from the floor, his only weapon. I really need to start carrying a gun. Velra pulled 2 small energy daggers from her belt. Then stopped talking and start fighting. The first wave of Drevak's enforcers stormed in, their armor gleaming under the flickering tunnel lights. Zina moved like lightning, dodging energy blasts and striking with lethal precision. Velra danced between enemies, her daggers leaving streaks of blue light in the air. Karis stood still, closing her eyes. James swung the metal rod at the closest guard, barely dodging a blade aimed at his ribs. He kicked out, sending the alien warrior crashing into the wall. Then something shifted. The lights flickered wildly, and suddenly the entire tunnel hummed with strange energy. Karis opened her eyes. The walls glowed, symbols flashing in rapid patterns. Zana noticed first. She's activating it. James barely had time to react before the ground split open beneath them. The descent to power. James fell. The tunnel gave way, sending him and the sisters plummeting into a cavernous space below. They crashed onto a massive stone platform, the impact rattling James's bones. Above them, Drevak's warriors stared down in shock. James groaned, "I am so tired of falling." Then he looked up and froze. Before them stood the ancient throne, a colossal structure carved from an unknown material, pulsing with pure energy. Symbols floated in the air around it, shifting and rewriting themselves in real time. Karis stepped forward, her breath hitching. "It's real." Zina's voice was barely a whisper. "The throne of judgment." James swallowed hard. "Okay, now what?" A deep laughter echoed from above. Drevak descended into the chamber, his golden eyes burning with triumph. "You think you can rewrite the law, human?" His voice was mocking, cruel. "You think you can defy me?" James's jaw clenched. He was bruised, exhausted, and completely outmatched. But he wasn't backing down. He took a step toward the throne. "Yeah, I do. Humanity's strength, more than just fighting." The air was thick with tension. James Carter stood on the platform in the depths of the Veraxian palace, facing Drevak, the imposing warrior who had hunted them all the way through the tunnels. The ancient throne loomed behind him, glowing with unimaginable power. Drevak's voice echoed through the chamber, a low growl of contempt. "You dare challenge me, human? You have no place here." James, bruised and battered from his earlier battles, met his gaze without flinching. His body was aching, his muscles burned from the non-stop fight, but something inside him felt different now. He wasn't just fighting for his life anymore. He was fighting for the sisters, for their future, and for the chance to rewrite the laws of a world that had enslaved them. Xena, Karis, and Velra stood behind him, the air around them charged with anticipation. They could feel it too, the weight of history, the power of the ancient throne just behind them. But there was one thing they all knew. Fighting alone wouldn't win this. "Step aside, human," Drevak sneered. "Let the real warriors fight." James gritted his teeth. He wasn't just a soldier, not like Drevak. He wasn't a noble warrior bred to fight. He wasn't even a trained Veraxian. But he had something that Drevak didn't: the power of human resolve. The power of ingenuity. James knew he couldn't match Drevak's strength. The alien warrior was massive, his muscles bulging under his armor like something out of a nightmare. But James had something more powerful than brute strength. He had strategy. "Drevak, you don't get it," James said, his voice steady despite the fear bubbling in his chest. "You're just fighting for the throne. But I'm fighting for something bigger." Drevak's laugh was booming, mocking. "Bigger? You think you can defeat me with words, human? You are nothing." James shook his head. "I'm not trying to defeat you with words. I'm trying to defeat you with this." With a swift motion, James reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device, a makeshift detonator made from random parts he had gathered during his escape. It was rough, but it would work. He was sure of it. "What is that?" Velra whispered. James didn't take his eyes off Drevak. A distraction. He pressed the button. The surprise attack. The device in James's hand beeped, and suddenly, bright lights flashed from the walls around them. Energy crackled through the air. Drevak's soldiers, still hovering on the edge of the platform, were thrown into chaos as the lights blinded them. Drevak growled, momentarily blinded, swinging his massive blade in frustration. But James wasn't looking for a fair fight. He was looking for an opening. The Veraxian warriors were distracted, their eyes struggling to adjust to the sudden glare. James darted forward, grabbing the nearest piece of ancient technology, a long, jagged spear embedded in the platform. He didn't know how it worked, but he could feel the energy humming through it. And that was all he needed. Without hesitation, James swung the spear at Drevak, narrowly missing his opponent's chest. The move was unpredictable, and that's what gave James the edge. The unexpected attack caused Drevak to stumble back, knocking him off balance for just a moment. Velra was the first to seize the opportunity. She leaped forward, her energy daggers flashing in the dim light. Zina and Karis, not to be outdone, advanced with deadly precision, each striking with controlled power. The energy in the room was palpable, a perfect mix of human strategy and alien might. The twist. For a moment, it seemed like they might actually win. Drevak was on the defensive, momentarily overwhelmed by the speed and unexpected tactics of the humans and their allies. But then, Drevak's eyes flickered with something else. Something dangerous. "I underestimated you," Drevak sneered. He slammed his massive blade into the ground, and the entire chamber shook. James barely had time to react. The floor beneath them began to crack, sending ripples of energy across the platform. The ancient throne hummed louder, as if it were responding to Drevak's call. James felt a pulse of dark energy radiating from the throne. Something was happening. Something big. Suddenly, a beam of energy shot up from the throne itself, blinding everyone in the chamber. James shielded his eyes, but he could hear the unmistakable hum of power building. The ground trembled, and Drevak's laughter echoed again, this time with a sense of victory. "You can't stop me, human," Drevak said, his voice filled with utter contempt. "This throne will restore my bloodline and the power of the Veraxian Empire. You are nothing but a distraction." The breaking point. As the energy from the throne intensified, James felt a surge of adrenaline rush through him. This wasn't over. He turned to the sisters, who were standing their ground, despite the growing energy field. Their expressions were fierce, but there was something more: determination. James suddenly understood. He wasn't alone in this fight. They had been fighting for their lives, their freedom, but now they were fighting for something bigger. Drevak had underestimated humanity's strength. He thought strength came only from bloodlines and power. But James and the sisters understood something far more important: the strength that came from choice, from the will to fight for others. "Do it," James whispered to Karis, who stood next to the throne. She nodded, and with a swift motion, she activated the throne's true power. The throne of judgment. The throne pulsed once more, and the entire chamber exploded with light. The energy that had once been a weapon now became a shield. James's heart raced as the beam shot through the chamber, enveloping Drevak in its blinding glow. His once strong form shuddered as the throne's energy consumed him. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, it stopped. Drevak lay motionless on the floor, defeated not by force, but by the very will of the throne. James couldn't believe what had just happened. The law had been rewritten. The ancient power had been unleashed, and human ingenuity had triumphed. The Veraxian Empire was changed forever. The final challenge. The ground trembled beneath them as the echoes of Drevak's fall still reverberated through the chamber. James stood, his heart pounding in his chest, his body a mess of cuts and bruises. The ancient throne hummed with an unfamiliar power, its glow now a soft, steady pulse in the center of the room. Around him, the sisters were catching their breath, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and triumph. But despite the victory they'd just achieved, there was an unsettling quiet in the air. The silence was too deep. And then, in the distance, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed through the corridor. "I thought it was over," James muttered, wiping the blood from his brow. Zina narrowed her eyes. "It's far from over." Before James could respond, the door at the far end of the chamber burst open, and the room was flooded with light. A new figure entered. Not Drevak. Not a soldier. This was someone far worse. The High Speaker's true intentions. A figure cloaked in black robes walked toward them, their presence almost unsettling in its calm. The hood obscured their face, but the energy they exuded was powerful, familiar. James stiffened. "Who are you?" The figure stepped forward, and the air shifted around them. "I am Aranthos." The voice was cold, calculating, yet eerily calm. "And I am the one who will ensure that the law of the Veraxian people remains unchanged." The High Speaker. James's breath caught in his throat. The real power behind the throne wasn't Drevek. It was this person, the one who had been manipulating events from the shadows. Zinna took a step forward, her voice low, warning. "You're too late. Drevek is dead. The throne is ours to command now." Aranthos chuckled, the sound like ice scraping across stone. "You misunderstand. The throne was never yours to control. It was always mine to wield." James's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" Aranthos finally lifted their hood, revealing an alien face, sharp features, angular eyes, glowing with a faint golden light. "The throne does not respond to power alone," Aranthos explained. "It responds to bloodline. The one who can awaken its true potential is the one who carries the old blood of the Veraxian kings. And that, James Carter, is me." A twist of fate. James's mind raced. The throne, which had just been used to rewrite the law, had never been meant to choose the worthy. It had been meant to choose the bloodline of ancient kings. The true rulers of Veraxa were more than just a bloodline. They were a dynasty, an ancient race with godlike power hidden in their veins. Zinna stepped in front of James, her posture proud and defensive. "You're lying. The throne only obeys those who have earned it, those who fight for it." Aranthos smiled. "You think you've earned it by battling Drevek, by defeating a pawn." The figure raised a hand, and the air shuddered with energy. "The throne has been waiting for centuries for a true heir to come forward. And now it has chosen me." Velra stepped forward, her voice biting with fury. "What makes you think the throne will recognize you over us?" Aranthos laughed softly. "Because I am the bloodline you've been fighting against. The throne can only recognize the true heir, and I am the one who carries it." For a moment, the sisters faltered. James could see the doubt in their eyes, doubt that hadn't been there before. The throne, the ancient power that had already shifted the balance of their world, now seemed to have its own plans. And James, he was just human. He wasn't a king. A battle for the throne. James's eyes narrowed. The fear and confusion inside him slowly began to melt away. This was it, the moment he'd feared. The moment when the unseen forces behind this entire conflict came to light. But he wasn't backing down. No. James stepped forward, meeting Aranthos's gaze with a newfound resolve. "You may have blood, you may have power, but you don't have what makes us human." Aranthos tilted their head, as if intrigued by James's sudden defiance. "And what is that, human?" James's voice was steady. "We don't fight because it's easy. We fight because we choose to." Aranthos raised an eyebrow, but before they could speak, James pointed to the ancient throne. "This throne isn't about who has the most bloodline. It's about who is willing to fight for it. You've underestimated us. You've underestimated me." The moment the words left his mouth, Zinna, Kiris, and Velra moved in perfect unison. The power that flowed between them felt electric, as though their very presence could change the world. For a split second, everything stood still. The energy in the chamber shifted, the ancient throne pulsing in time with their movements. The throne wasn't about bloodline or destiny. It was about will. And together, they were more powerful than any one person's claim to the throne. The true power of choice. Kiris moved first, her hands glowing with a soft, violet energy as she reached for the throne. Zinna was beside her, her silver eyes fixed on Aranthos with a cold fury. Velra's daggers glowed with an ethereal blue light, sharp and ready. Aranthos hesitated, looking between the sisters and James, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "You think you can defy me?" They raised a hand, sending a pulse of energy that slammed into the ground beneath them. But as the energy crashed around them, the sisters stepped forward in perfect harmony, their powers combining into a force that completely absorbed Aranthos' attack. James didn't wait. He ran to the throne, his hand brushing its surface. The energy flared, and for the first time, the throne responded to him, not because of bloodline, not because of power, but because he was human, because he chose to fight for it. The energy coursed through him, through the sisters, as a blinding light enveloped them. James felt it, the true power of choice. The throne didn't belong to any one bloodline. It belonged to those who were willing to take it, those who chose to fight for the future. The duel that changed a planet. The ground was still trembling beneath James's feet as the blinding light from the ancient throne began to fade. The throne, now glowing with the power of their combined will, had responded to human strength. The strength of choice. But the battle wasn't over yet. James could feel the power coursing through him. The collective will of the sisters and the throne itself now bound to him. The intensity in the chamber was thick, like the very air had been charged by 1,000 storms, each crackling with energy. But through it all, Aranthos stood tall, unfazed by the overwhelming power. The High Speaker's cloak fluttered in the swirling energy, their golden eyes glowing more fiercely than ever. "You think this is victory?" Aranthos' voice cut through the charged atmosphere. "You are nothing. You may have found the throne, but that doesn't make you its true ruler." The figure's voice rang with absolute confidence. James stood his ground, feeling the power of the throne. "I don't need to be a ruler. I just need to be the one who changes this place. And I'm not leaving until I've seen it done." Aranthos' eyes narrowed. "Then let us see if you are truly worthy of the throne." The High Speaker's last stand. Before James could react, Aranthos raised their hand, summoning an immense wave of energy that slammed into the floor like a tidal wave. The air shimmered, crackling with energy, and the entire chamber began to distort, as if reality itself was bending under the weight of Aranthos' power. The throne, now glowing like a beacon in the center of the room, pulsed in response, but the power Aranthos was wielding was something ancient, something far beyond anything James had encountered. The figure wasn't just a politician or a noble. Aranthos was the true force behind the throne. The High Speaker's bloodline had been the key all along. "You think you can stand against me, human?" Aranthos' voice was a low, menacing growl. "You don't even understand the power you wield." James gritted his teeth, his hand still trembling with the power he had unlocked. "You're right. I don't understand it fully, but that doesn't mean I'm afraid of it. I don't fight for power, Aranthos. I fight for freedom." The sisters moved closer to him, their bodies aglow with their own power, each of them standing stronger than before. They had fought for their freedom, for the right to choose their future, and now they were willing to give everything for that cause. The room grew heavy with tension as the two sides prepared for the final confrontation. A battle of wills. Aranthos' eyes flared with bright golden light, and the air around them shuddered in response. "This ends now." With a sharp flick of the wrist, Aranthos sent another blast of dark energy rocketing toward James. James raised his hand, and the energy from the throne responded to his will. A barrier of light formed around him, absorbing Aranthos' attack. The sisters joined him, their powers combining in a display of sheer determination. The throne hummed in the background, its energy wrapping around them, forming a shield. James's heart raced, the power inside him nearly overwhelming. He had never felt anything like this before, but the question wasn't whether he could survive, it was whether he could control it. He took a deep breath, focusing all of his thoughts, channeling the energy into something more than just a defense. The moment of truth. With a determined shout, James pushed forward, sending a wave of energy out from his hands. The ground cracked beneath him as the raw force of humanity's will surged through the chamber. The ancient throne's power amplified the attack, and it blasted toward Aranthos with incredible force. Aranthos raised their hand to block the attack, but the sheer power of the throne's will was too much. The blast of energy overpowered them, slamming the High Speaker into the wall with a deafening crash. For a moment, the room fell silent. The only sound was the low hum of the throne, its light now a steady, calm pulse. James stood, breathing heavily, as the light of the throne flickered around him. Aranthos slowly rose from the rubble, their once confident form now bruised and battered. But even as they stood, James could see the flicker of doubt in their eyes. For the first time, Aranthos wasn't the one controlling the situation. It was the will of the people, the strength of those who chose to fight for freedom. The choice that changed the future. Xena stepped forward, her voice as firm as ever. "You've had your chance, Aranthos. You lost." Aranthos's golden eyes locked onto James. There was no anger in their expression now, only a quiet realization. "I had the throne, and yet it chose you." James didn't look away. "The throne didn't choose me. It chose the will of those who fought for what's right, and that's what matters." Xena, Karis, and Velra stood side by side, their powers flickering out of them as the light of the throne faded. James could feel the weight of what had just happened, the finality of the choice they had made. Aranthos stepped back, bowing their head. "So be it. You've rewritten the law, and you've rewritten history. Viraxa is yours to shape now. A new era." The chamber quieted, the pulse of the throne now steady and peaceful. Aranthos was defeated, and the throne no longer hummed with energy. It now sat, silent, waiting for the future to come. James turned to the sisters. "We did it." His voice was hoarse, but there was something else in it now, something stronger. Xena nodded, her eyes softening. "You didn't just win, James. You showed us that humans are capable of changing worlds." Karis gave a small smile. "You may not be royalty by blood, but you've earned the throne in a way no one else could." James looked at the throne, then at the sisters. He didn't need to rule. It was never about power. It was about freedom and choice. And now, that was what the people of Viraxa would have. The planet, once ruled by bloodlines and ancient power, was now in the hands of those who had the strength to choose their own destiny. And the journey, it was just beginning.